And for more on the aftermath of the tragic shootings in New Zealand and the Netherlands and how governments are responding to it, we're being joined now by investigative journalist Ben Swann. Ben, first let's start in New Zealand. The Prime Minister there is hinting at an all-out blanket ban on semi-automatic weapons there. First, can you touch on how controversial of a move that might be and what even qualifies as semi-automatic?
Right, so that's one of the problems here, is that whenever you talk about semi-automatic rifles or so-called assault rifles, that's the term that is most often used by politicians and media. Assault rifles especially is a very broad term because there's no actual definition for what an assault rifle is. Semi-automatic rifles, and listen, every time I do a story on one of these issues, I hear from gun enthusiasts who go through the minutia of the difference between a semi-automatic rifle and a fully automatic rifle and the differences between the two. And one of the things that we've seen in the past here in the U.S. is that when these efforts are made to ban semi-automatic rifles, it does very little to stop high-profile weapons that release large numbers of rounds from actually being sold, because very small changes can be made to, again, this quote-unquote assault-style weapon, this military-style weapon, to no longer qualify it as a semi-automatic. So it's a very difficult thing when politicians start going down this road, because it's so wide open to interpretation as to what exactly are you banning, what type of gun, and the capacity of those weapons. Yeah,
I mean, terrible pun, no pun intended, but it really is kind of a constantly moving target, and especially with how people can modify these things. So it's kind of hard to get a handle on that. And then this morning, unfortunately, we here in America at least woke up to yet another mass shooting, this one out of the Netherlands. As we know, there in the Netherlands, gun control laws are way stricter than they have in New Zealand, stricter than here in the U.S. Permits are only given out to licensed hunters, law enforcement, or carefully vetted gun club folks. So are there measures besides, I guess, what we just mentioned for the gun control movement for the government? Could we be looking to enhance those to curb these terrible atrocities?
So here's, again, this is the problem whenever we have these discussions. And every time there is a mass shooting that involves a high-profile weapon, a semi-automatic rifle, an AK-47, whatever it might be, an AR-15, when those kinds of weapons are used, there's always this talk about we need to ban these weapons. They're for military only. They shouldn't be used. Now, when other countries do it, it's a little harder to debate the rights issue, because obviously in the U.S. we have a constitution that protects the rights to keep and bear arms, as opposed to other countries which don't necessarily protect those rights within their constituting government documents. Excuse me. But here's the problem: is that when we go down these roads, regardless of the country that we're talking about, the biggest issue that we see over and over is that banning these weapons, whether you want to call them assault weapons or semi-automatic weapons, does not prevent organized crime. It does not prevent individual criminals from being able to buy those weapons on the black market. It does not end that. And so over and over what we see is that people who really have a desire to get these weapons can still get them, but the average citizen cannot get them. And the average citizen is the one who would use it for self-defense in these cases. And a lot of people will say, well, you don't need a weapon like that for self-defense. Well, you only do if someone else on the other side who's attacking you has one of these weapons. So I know it's a messy subject, and people are very passionate about it, Manila. But when you actually break down the numbers here in the U.S., if we want to talk about where people are targeted with these weapons, it's in gun-free zones. Laws do not stop crime from happening. They only punish people who break those laws.
Exactly. It's as much as a red light stops a car speeding through an intersection. So lastly, Ben, the government of New Zealand also has been taking action against people sharing or viewing the video of the atrocity in Christchurch. Access to websites, including like Zero Hedge, have been blocked. At least one person is now being charged for sharing the live stream online. Is that a kind of censorship, and should we worry?
Well, it's definitely a kind of censorship. The problem is that government has determined, in this particular case, the New Zealand government has determined that you do not have a right to view this because it's a horrific, evil act, and it absolutely was, but you don't have a right to see it. And the question becomes, why? Well, why does government believe, in this case, the New Zealand government believe, that preventing people from seeing the video will stop future acts of violence? doesn't stop it. The discussion about it, people discussing the evil that occurred here, people having discussions about, human life and the value of humanity is what stops future attacks, not suppressing discussion about it.
All right, we'll leave that right there. Ben Swann, thank you for sharing your insights with us today.
Manila, thanks.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.